Hello. In this clip from our Justia webinar, Retirement Planning Strategies for Law Firm Owners, Darren Wurz introduces the concept of the wealth gap and covers how to determine and take advantage of it. If you want to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Okay, let's start with determining your wealth gap. So what is a wealth gap? Well, wealth gap is really simple. It's the difference between the wealth that you need to achieve the life you want and the current wealth that you have now. Typically, when we think of this, we think of your investment portfolio, but it could also include perhaps the value of your law practice. So stick around for that. So that's what it is. It's the gap between where you are now financially and where you want to get to. So how do we determine what exactly that gap is? Well, it all starts, and this is why I asked this question in the beginning, what does retirement mean to you? It starts with identifying and defining very clearly what your goals are. And I challenge you, even if you have goals about the future, write them down, make them written down specific goals. You know, we know what SMART goals are, right? Specific, measurable, aspirational, realistic, time-based, right? So you need to have really specific goals. And the reason you need to have these goals is to really identify what is the level of wealth that you need to get to. So that first question I asked is very relevant. What does your ideal retirement look like? Some other questions that you can ask yourself. What are you passionate about? What gives you a sense of purpose? What does your ideal lawyer lifestyle look like? And it may not be, the reason I frame this question this way is it may not be completely retiring. It might be more of that work optional kind of lifestyle. Where do you want to live? That's a really critical one. Geography, right? Standard of living is going to really play into that. If you want to retire in New Mexico, or you want to retire in California, or you want to retire in the Caribbean, right? I have some clients who are retiring to the mountains in Mexico in an expat community. Very, very interesting stuff. There's a lot of really cool ideas, but you really have to start thinking very specifically and critically about where exactly you want to live. Finally, what are your values and legacy goals, right? What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind? What kind of values do you want to carry on and pass on to your kids and grandkids and things like that? And one other one that I think really should be on here is, who are you spending time with? And, you know, here's the thing, maybe you're not this way, but a lot of lawyers I work with are very analytical. And so it can be hard to really dig deep down and think about, you know, what we want to do. And sometimes when I ask lawyers, you know, what are their goals? It's, you know, to move into this practice area, to do this with my business, and separate yourself from the business for a minute and think personally. If you were no longer a practicing attorney, what would you do tomorrow? Right? What would you wake up and do tomorrow? What would that thing be? When you go on vacation, what do you do? Where do you go? What are the activities that you enjoy? I was talking with a client last week and we were really struggling to dig deep down. Finally, I got to some core issues and he finally opened up and said, I want to be a science fiction writer. And I was like, wow, I never knew that about you. I've been working with you for a couple of years and we had never really drilled down deep to that core underlying goal of something completely outside of law that's maybe inspiring and passionate. So really think critically and take some time for yourself, if you haven't done this, and dig deep and figure out what's important to you. Now, we will have to do that because we want to know what we need to spend in retirement if we were to retire. And determining your future budget starts with determining your budget now. And so many law firm owners I know have no idea what their income and expenses are. And if that's you too, that's okay. I'm here to tell you, you're not alone. You're busy. I get it. And that's just the nature of being a law firm owner, being a business owner, and being a practicing attorney. You may not have time to track your budget. You may not have time to keep track of your income and expenses. Well, I'm going to give you a great tool today that I use with clients. It's called Monarch Money. And if you're following along in the Mentee, you can click on that link and it'll take you to Monarch Money's website. You can investigate that. There are a lot of personal budgeting software tools out there, and using a software tool can be a great way to accomplish the goal of tracking your income and expenses and making it easy for yourself. So I encourage you, if you're not using something like that, go ahead and start using something like that. Some other ideas for you. Once you do that, you're going to be able to create a budget, and really you're going to be able to understand where your cash is flowing. What are the big key expenses for you now? What does a typical month look like for you? What are the main things that you have to pay for? Once you identify that, you want to create a list, and then you want to adjust that for changes in retirement. Which of those items are going to go up? Which of those items are going to go down? You're not going to be buying power suits anymore for the courtroom, perhaps, right? That may be an expense that goes away for you. If you're a law firm owner, here's another thing you need to think about. What are the expenses that you run through the law firm that you're going to have to assume personally? That's a really critical question. For a lot of law firm owners, a lot of business owners, we expense things through our business. Maybe our car is being paid for by the business. Maybe certain computer technologies and things that we use are being paid for by the business. You're going to have to assume those personally in retirement. So don't forget to look at those very carefully as well. Here are some examples of things that could change: healthcare costs, commuting to work, things like that. And if you want to dig deep into the healthcare costs, I went too far here. Let me go back. I have a link for you there to focus on your, calculate your Medicare costs. That link will take you to Medicare's website, and they have a great calculator for you there to determine your future potential out-of-pocket Medicare expenses. All right, now if you need some help doing this, I do have a nice little cheat sheet for you. It's my budgeting worksheet, and this is what it looks like. If you'd like a copy of this, feel free to email me. My email is down there. It's kind of a long one, so I apologize for that, but it's dpw@wertzfinancialservices.com. And don't worry, that email will be coming up later in the show as well. So if you miss it now, you can get it later. But if you email me, I'll send you a copy of this, and that might be helpful for thinking not only about what your current expenses are, but what your future expenses might be as well. Okay, once you have identified your current budget and what your future budget looks like, you know what your income needs to be, we want to identify and calculate your income gap. And that's going to help us understand what your wealth gap is. So this is very simple, right? You may have some future income streams in retirement. These could be things like Social Security income, pension income, rental income, things like that. So you want to adjust your future budget for those things. So let's say your future budget is $150,000 in retirement. Simply subtract those future income streams, and you'll come up with your net retirement need or your income gap. So if my future Social Security expectation is $50,000 after tax, then my net expenses or my income gap would be $100,000. Why do we need to know this? Because we need to know where that money is going to come from. And that takes us to the next part, which is figuring out our total wealth needed. And we're going to use a general rule called the 4% rule. You may have heard of the 4% rule before. It's a great way to estimate how much money you need to retire. This is based on a lot of studies that have been done that have shown that, over many, many different time frames of investing in the stock market, a withdrawal rate starting at 4% and increasing each year with inflation is generally a strongly sustainable pathway, is a generally very sustainable withdrawal rate, and meaning that you have a very low likelihood of exhausting your investment portfolio over a 30-year time frame, which is a generally the amount of time you may expect to spend in retirement. So 4% rule. How does this work? Well, very simply, you divide your income gap by 4%. So this is also going to account for inflation because it allows room for your income to increase each year with inflation. And that is so important. especially now, right? With inflation being much more than it has been historically. So here's a great example for you. If my income gap is $200,000, I'm going to divide that by 4%. That equals $5 million. So in order to generate an income stream of $200,000 over a 30-year time frame, adjusted for inflation, with a low risk of exhausting my resources, I would need approximately $5 million. Okay, finally, we come to the step we've all been waiting for, and that is to calculate your wealth gap. What is the wealth that you need to retire, right? You determined that in the previous step. Now you're simply going to subtract your current wealth, and the result is your wealth gap. So it's simple. If I have a wealth gap of, if my current wealth is $1 million and I need $2 million to retire, my wealth gap is $1 million, right? That's the gap. That's the amount that I need to increase. And as a law firm owner, there are two ways that you can make up that gap. The first is going to be through your investments, and the second one I'm going to show you in just a minute. Here's a little bit of background information on where that 4% rule comes from. This was a study done by Morningstar testing out 30-year safe withdrawal rates by asset allocation, and you see that 4% generally over a 25 to 30-year time frame is pretty good. If you want to be more conservative, you should use a lower withdrawal rate of maybe 3%. If you are comfortable with risk and you want to be more aggressive, you can use a higher rate, but I would caution you there to be careful.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more law practice and legal marketing videos. See you in our next clip.